Welcome to From Content to Clients. I'm your host, Sydney O'Brien, and this show is for busy, service-based business owners who do not have time to keep throwing content at the wall and hoping it leads somewhere for their business. Here, we talk about smarter content making, stronger messaging, and how to create content that actually helps your business get clients, especially if you are working in small chunks of time. Today, I'm super excited to get to talk to Jenny because I feel like I've been in, I don't even know how many of your bundles and summits and things, but she's just like a great podcasting resource, especially for mom business owners. So I'm really excited to have her on to share her insights. Jenny, could you just give us a little bit of background information, how you got started?
Yeah. So I've been in business for about 10 years now. So this summer will be 10 years, which is insane. I feel like a dinosaur in the online space now. But I've been in business for 10 years. I have not always been doing podcasting. I started as like a VA, social media manager, typical pipeline that a lot of people have to the online space. They start as like VA and then they find their like niche. And then in 2019, I niched to, and I've been doing that ever since. I mean, most of the time now has been focused on the podcast side of things. I started focusing on the podcast side of things because I started my own show in 2018 and I learned like the ins and outs of managing it and I really liked it. And then I had a client that came to me that like wanted VA work, but then she also had a show and then she asked, if I was comfortable managing her show. And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. And then I started working on her show and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I'd done it for myself, but I just, I didn't really know that you could do it for other people, like as like a main service or whatever. I knew you could do it, but I just didn't know you could like offer that as a main service. So then, yeah, I really liked it. And then I started getting a bunch of inquiries for like just strictly podcast launches and podcast management. And from there, I was like, okay, cool. I can get rid of like my regular VA clients and just focus on this. And that's what I did. So I've been doing ever since. And, I still do a lot of the production side of things as well for clients, but I've been over the past year or so, maybe 2 years, been focusing more on like the growth side of things. So helping people like not just with the production, but also like here's how you can get in front of more people and focusing on podcast SEO, content strategy, and all that stuff, not just, here, I can edit your podcast and write your show notes and things like that. So I've been kind of up leveling in that sense, especially with, the introduction of all these AI tools that are like, I can edit your podcast for you in, 10 seconds or whatever, just click of a button, just like, making myself have more value to people. Because I mean, obviously those tools don't fully do the best job ever, but people don't really realize that. They're like, oh, it's going to make my life easier and it's only, $30 a month. Cool. Let me do it. And then they put it out and it doesn't really always sound that great because, they just clicked a button and they didn't actually like do any quality control after the fact. But yeah, I kind of like saw a gap where I needed to do something more than just the production side of things so that I could actually help people, get in front of more people because I think that's more important in the long run. Like, sure, good audio quality is great, but like if their show is only reaching like 10 people a month, why are they going to continue doing it? So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I feel very similarly about like Instagram marketing, where people focus so much on like aesthetics and like the cute hooks and trends and stuff. But if you don't have the strategy behind it, it's not going to help your business at all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very important. And like, yeah, people just think like it's going to look nice or it's going to be pretty or whatever. But like, yeah, that is one part of it. But if you don't have like the strategy side of things, then yeah, there's no point in outsourcing because you're just like paying and then you're not getting in front of more people. And obviously that's people's main goal is to get in front of a bigger audience so they can actually sell what they're selling. So
yeah. So many people start a podcast, but they never see it translate to results. Do you think other than the like over relying on AI for some stuff, there's one big mistake that people are making?
Yeah, I would say one big mistake that people are making is like they don't leverage like they think, okay, they're like really thinking about, oh, I need this microphone. Oh, I need this thing. They think about like all the little tools they need and stuff. And like that's their main focus. But it's like, okay, sure, but that takes 10 seconds to figure out. They're so overly concerned with that when they should be focusing about like the overall holistic picture of how this is going to integrate into their marketing. Like how is a podcast going to work side by side with your other marketing efforts to like sell your products and services? A lot of people underestimate that and they don't think about it. They just start putting out these episodes and they don't always necessarily correlate to what they're selling in their business. And then they're like, but my podcast isn't bringing me any results in my business. But it's like, okay, but like, do your episodes correlate to anything you're selling? If no, then that's, your first step. If they do, but you're not talking about what you have to offer, then, like try telling people, like people don't just like know that you sell certain things. You have to tell them. They're not just like so curious. They're like, oh, I like this podcast. Let me listen to it. And then like some people might go and look at your website, but like majority of people are just going to move along. If they don't hear what you have to sell or you don't even need to be like super salesy with it. You don't need to be like, here's a whole episode about my service. You can literally just say, one of my clients, we did this together, like while you're naturally speaking about it. It doesn't have to be like super salesy. And I think a lot of people, that's such a missed opportunity for. They just like don't talk about what they have to offer. Or the first step is what they're offering has nothing to do with the podcast topic. Or it's just like too general businessy where it's like they can't naturally make it kind of go back to what they're offering in their business.
Yeah. I feel like people underestimate how often they need to actually mention what they do in
Hmm.
like very specific terms. And I see that on like Instagram as well. That and actually like validating what you're offering before you pitch it.
Yes.
Like making sure, you're talking about the pain points and like painting this picture of why what you do is the solution.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about that. They're just like sitting there like, "Oh, here's the benefits, here's the features," that kind of thing, but they're not actually talking
Yeah.
about like the thing that actually matters to actually sell that whatever they're offering. It's just like, "Here's what you get from it." And it's like, "Sure, those are nice to know, but like if you're not telling them what the pain point that it can solve is, then they're not going to purchase it anyway. So it doesn't matter if you offer 50 calls or whatever you're offering, you know what I mean? Like you have
Yeah.
to let them know like why they need it in the first place before you're sitting there like listing out what they get from it, which
Hmm.
I think a lot of people don't
And
realize.
yeah. And I feel like that's a lot easier to do on a podcast than it is on like Instagram marketing because I mean, Instagram people are just like constantly scrolling.
Yes.
So you have to say the same thing like a million bajillion times.
Yeah.
But on podcasting, I think it would be a little easier. I mean,
Hmm.
podcast as well. So I kind of know this part. It's true. But like you can share, like you were saying, like talking about like client wins and sharing
Hmm.
stories that way and case studies. It helps build a lot more trust.
Yeah, yeah, and like people are like on Instagram, like you said, they're kind of just like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You don't really have their undivided attention unless you like break that in some way, like stop the scroll or whatever it's. So I feel like with podcasts, like you already have their attention, like maybe not undivided because like who gets anyone's undivided attention anymore? Like let's be honest, but like I feel like you have a bigger pull on their attention than if they're just scrolling on Instagram. Because like sometimes people are on Instagram just doom scrolling. They're not even paying attention. Like I know I'm on, TikTok or Instagram and I'm just like, let's see what's here today. I'm not really like looking to make a purchasing decision. But when I'm listening to a
Hmm.
podcast, I feel like I'm just more like locked in to like what that person is saying because, I invested the time to actually put on their show. I wasn't just like on my feed and happened to see it, and be like, oh, this looks good. Like most of the time for podcasts, like it is the people that I'm consciously like, I need to listen to her show every single week versus like I just stumbled upon it and, you know, thought it looked good. Where I feel like we can do that a lot with Instagram. We'll like stumble upon a post and be like, oh, this looks good. But then like we may not ever follow that person or engage with them further after the fact.
Hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. And why do you think podcasting is like a great marketing avenue for mom business owners specifically?
Honestly, so many reasons. I would say like the ease of it being like a low lift channel. I feel like a lot of like other platforms, like you got to be on video and, you feel like you need to be all done up and stuff. And with podcasting, like if you want to record in your pajamas and you don't want to ever use the video, you can do that. You don't have to like look all done up. You don't have to be like worried about lighting and things like that. Whereas like if you're talking about like YouTube or something, like, yeah, you should probably have a decent ish video. So it's not like people aren't like, oh my God, this is like from the 90s. Like, did you film this on a potato? Like, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
So I feel like with podcasting, that is like a huge perk for moms because we don't have a ton of extra time to just like sitting there like fussing with our lighting and all the things, or like worrying about, oh, I have to record this during the day. Like maybe I want to record it at night when my kids are asleep and I don't have to like, I can have just showered and be in my pajamas or something. So I think that's like a big draw to it because you can do it whenever. You don't have to worry about like lighting or anything like that. Also, if your audience is moms as well, which I know a lot of mom business owners, they also work with a lot of moms. So their audience prefers the ease of podcasts too, because they can listen on the go when they're doing laundry, chores around the house, walking the dog, whatever they're doing, they can listen much easier than like a YouTube, or like you're not going to be like folding laundry while reading a blog post. You can't really do that because you'd have to be utilizing your hands, right? With a podcast, it's like hands free. Same with YouTube. You're not like going to be like, looking down at your phone while you're trying to do laundry or trying to do the dishes. And I know like it's easier to like listen to YouTube videos now, but like, I don't know, for me, I don't really like if I'm going to watch a YouTube video, I want to actually watch it. I don't want to be like utilizing it like a podcast because I'm like, what's the point of it being on YouTube if I'm not actually looking at the person's face or whatever? So I think just like ease of use as both like a host and also a listener is, number one, I would say. Also, I think it's like really great in terms of like repurposing. Like you can use it in so many ways. I think all long form content is really, really great for that. For my podcast and for clients' podcasts, we always repurpose it into a blog post. Some of my clients put it on YouTube as well. Some don't. Some just do audio only. So you can turn it into video content. Even if they don't put it on YouTube, I always pull clips for them. So they have clips to use on social as well, promoting and things like that. I think it's just a great repurposing tool. I would say pretty much all long form content is really great for repurposing, but I would say those are like the two main things. And also, I don't know, audio is just really intimate. I know video is intimate too, but audio is just really intimate. Like if someone is like choosing to listen to your show and spend, 30, 45 minutes with you on a weekly or every other week basis, like that's saying something because I feel like it's just, I'm not choosing to do that with too many people aside from my clients, and I'm sure, most podcast listeners aren't listening to 20 shows a week. They're probably listening to like 5 max. So like for people to decide that they want to listen to your show, like that's a big deal. And I know a lot of the times people think like, oh, I'm only getting 50 downloads per episode or something. And that doesn't seem like a lot. But at the end of the day, like if you're in a room of 50 people, like you're speaking at a conference and there's 50 people in the room, like that's kind of a big deal. Like even though like when you look at the numbers at your podcast, it doesn't seem that huge. Like if you were actually in person with 50 people, that would be a win. So that's another thing too. Like just like looking at the numbers and seeing that, and it may not feel that impressive, but it is more than a lot of people believe. So
Yeah, and just on the downloads number thing, I feel like I don't know how long ago I read this or how accurate it is, but I saw at one point if you're getting like more than 30
mm,
something, like 33 maybe downloads in like the first week, you're in like the top half of
yeah.
all podcasts.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
Buzzsprout puts out those stats, yeah, and they keep them updated on like a monthly basis, and I think that's still
Hmm.
like pretty accurate. Yeah. So a lot of people think with downloads, like everyone gets like humongous downloads, and if you only get like 33 downloads on within 7 days, like they're like, oh, I'm a failure or whatever. But it's like honestly, like you're in the top half of podcasts, so that is something, right? That's a win in itself. Like, not everyone's gonna have millions and millions of downloads, and I think that's the thing people don't realize. Like they think if they start a podcast, all of a sudden overnight they're just gonna get millions of downloads and be like the next Joe Rogan or whatever. But that's just really not the reality for most podcasters. And I think like even the smaller shows, honestly, from what I've seen, like I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts. I've had clients be guests on lots of podcasts. And like just across the board, the smaller podcasts tend to do better in terms of like engagement because sure, they're not getting like huge numbers, but their audience like trusts them more and they trust their recommendations more. Whereas like if you're a guest on like a big show, you might get like a nice influx of people, but like after that, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I just feel like they don't trust the host's like recommendations as much because it's not as relatable. They're like, it's not like, oh, this host has a small show. She has a small following. Like she doesn't seem as down. She seems more down to earth than like the bigger people in the game, if that makes sense. So they're like less like they
Yeah.
take their recommendation more with a grain of salt than like someone else that has a smaller following because I don't know. It just seems like it's not like it's more relatable. It's not like what is it called? Like aspirational.
Hmm.
Yeah, they didn't, a lot of people like, they're like, oh, I'm never going to reach that level. So like, oh, that's just really aspirational. Whereas like, a smaller hosts are like, oh, like I could see myself having a show and being this size. So they're more likely to like take those people's recommendations and like, I don't know. I've just seen better conversions from the smaller shows, even though a lot of people think like you need to be on these big shows for it to be like worth it if you're like guesting or even if you have the show yourself. I don't know. I've just seen it's the results are better for the smaller shows. Just in terms of like conversions, like it's like comparing apples to oranges because it's like sure they're getting a lot of conversions because they have like a big audience, but like this person's converting at like 20%, but they're only converting at 5%, even though they have like this massive audience, which obviously
Yeah.
you'd rather convert at 20% than 5%. So yeah.
And I think as a listener, I would rather listen to someone that, like you said, is more relatable because it's more along where I am. And I always assume if it's like a big kind of production podcast, like they have a team, they have more hours, they have like all these other things that I don't have. So their advice is probably not going to work for me
Exactly.
without a lot of like caveats.
Exactly. If it's a smaller person, they're probably in a similar boat to you, so you can like apply
Hmm.
it to more things. Whereas, like, with bigger people, you're like, is this even possible for me as a smaller creator? Probably not.
Right. So if someone has a podcast and it's not generating clients or leads for them, what do you think the first step they should do is without spending a ton more time on it?
Yeah, I would say just like take a step back and take a look at like your past episodes for the past like 3 months. See what you put out, kind of see like am I like kind of do an audit essentially. So did listen to them. See, did you talk about your offers at all? If you didn't, that's probably like mistake number one. If you did, then are you talking about them enough? Are you having like too many offers? Like sometimes people are like stuffing it with too many things. They're like, I want this episode to focus on this one offer, but then like they shove a bunch of like other calls to action in the episode too, and then people get confused. Like sometimes you think, oh, if I have more calls to action, people are more likely to take action. Not true because they just get like overwhelmed. They're like, oh, she offered me like 10 different things to click on. Like I'm not going to do anything because that's too much. Or they just like, they click on it and they're like, this looks interesting. But then they're like, okay, never mind. Like, I don't feel like I know enough about this offer because this episode was about another offer completely, but they just linked it just in case kind of thing. Kind of just like audit your past couple months of content, see if you're talking about your offers enough, see if you're including too many call to actions, not enough call to actions. Another like quick thing you can do to like quickly increase your downloads to get in front of more people, because your episodes might not be the problem. You may just not be getting in front of enough people for it to, for you to see results, because maybe those people that are listening are like your diehards and they already own everything you've already put out. You know what I mean? So like a
Right.
little quick fix that I always recommend to people is like kind of just taking like, you don't need to like fully revamp your strategy, but does your podcast name is it optimized for search? Like, is it the Jenny Show? Like if that's what it's called, no one's typing in Jenny in like search engine. So maybe you need to like tweak your name a little bit or add a tagline that has keywords in it. And like the number one mistake I see a lot of people make is like their show is called the blah, blah, blah show. And that first keyword or that first word is the, and like that's such valuable real estate that you're using with the word the, which is not a searchable term. So, if your show is called in the players called the blah, blah, blah show, get rid of that the and just whatever the show is going to be first keyword or the first word. And I always recommend that first word of your show being like a searchable keyword. Like, for example, I have a show called Podcasting for Moms. That first word is podcasting. That is a searchable term. So anytime someone types in podcasting, my show is going to show up. May not be first, but it's going to show up. Same with my other show. I just recently rebranded, actually. It's called the Sustainable CEO Mom podcast. And sustainable is the first word. That is searchable. Might be searchable for like people thinking about like sustainability as like an eco-friendly thing. But the second two words are CEO and mom, and CEO is searchable, mom is searchable. And then I have like a tagline. So that's like a really quick way to like kind of revamp your show without having to like change the whole name, just adding like a tagline with keywords. And then a lot of people don't realize that they can add keywords to their name field as well. So like where it says your name, so yours would say Sydney O'Brien, you could add like a little like colon or like that little slashy line thing, and then like put your title, like, say your title was like visibility strategist for service providers or something like that. You can add more keywords there as well. And then, people is like type in visibility or something, your show pops up and things like that. So those are just like two little quick places you can make tweaks and will be able to get in front of more people. Because if you're going through your episodes and your content is good, your calls to action are good, you don't have too many or too little, it might just be you're not getting in front of enough people for them to come and purchase your offers. So that is the quick little thing that I would do. And that's like always my first thing that I fix when I'm optimizing someone's show. Cause like that makes such a big difference. And I'm like, oh my God, my show finally stopped like, plateauing or being like stuck at a standstill. So that's when people finally start seeing like new people are finding their show again.
I never knew that about the name field. That's so smart. I'm gonna have to go do that like as soon as we wrap this up.
That's what, like, whenever I tell people about that, they're always like, all right, after we get off, I'm gonna fix that. And literally
Yeah.
it's so fun because I go look at their show like a day later and they've updated that field, and I'm like, I'm curious like how long it takes to start seeing like results. But yeah, just like that little simple tweak makes such a big difference. Because I know a lot of people know about like the
Hmm.
tagline in the name field, but are the like in the podcast name field, but they don't know about like their actual name field. And then also like
Right.
optimizing your description and stuff like that too. A lot of people know about that. But yeah, the name field is also a place where you can add stuff. And you don't want to like keyword stuff, but just like add your title. And I always like to reiterate like like what kind of, like, I'm a blah 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 for who, like mom entrepreneurs, for service providers, for coaches, whatever, because that's another thing that people are searching, like show for coaches, and then your show is more likely to pop up.
Yeah, that's so smart. I'm so glad I asked that question now. I know we kind of talked a bit about this, but what role does strategy like messaging and offers play into turning listeners into paying clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think strategy is really important. And like I mentioned before, it's something a lot of people don't really think about. They're just like, oh, this episode sounds like something I want to talk about. Let's do it. And they don't really think about like the implications of that. So I think, getting that strategy, like I always like to start, I like to plan 3 months of content at a time for myself and my clients. Like, all right, what are we launching this quarter? So, I actually just went through this because we just turned into a new quarter. So we were going through, okay, what are we launching April? What are we launching May? What are we launching June? And like I have different content buckets for each client. Like this is an educational type episode. This is a case study type episode. This is a myth busting episode. So we kind of like played around with the different buckets of content, and then I like to do like one case study episode a month. And it doesn't have to be like a full, like, I'm recording this with one of my past clients type things. It can be something a lot simpler than that. But, whatever that month is, we're promoting that month, then that case study is kind of focused around whatever that offer is. And then, we make sure that the ad segments are aligning with whatever's being that promoted that month. Like, for example, like if my client's launching a accelerator program or something like that in May, the episodes in April are kind of like seeding to that accelerator. They're all going to be like kind of like leaning, like, here's the first step you need to know before you join this accelerator program, like whatever those things are. And then, the ads segments and the calls to action are all like, get on the wait list for the accelerator, or like if they're hosting some sort of like event before the program opens, then we're like leading people to the event registration page or whatever, whether that's like a webinar or a summit or like some kind of audio series or something. So that's how I like to plan. And that makes it so that you're like never forgetting about promotions. Because if you plan the content first and then you decide, oh, here's what I'm launching, I feel like there's lots of room to have like misalignments in what you're promoting and what content's talking about. So I start with like, okay, when are we launching these things? Let's plan around that first instead of like planning the content and then, figuring out when things are going to be, when you're doing an active launch or whatever. So I think that's a really great way to like think about the strategy. And so you're always thinking about that first before you're like, oh, this episode sounds good. And if you have like an episode idea that comes to your mind, but it doesn't really quite fit in like that, 3 month batch, then you can always just add it onto an ideas list for later. Because I have plenty of times where I come up with these ideas. I'm like, oh, I want to do this. Or it could be like a bonus episode, if you have room to have like a fifth episode in a month or something and you really want to do it like that month, but it's not like necessarily like fully tied to things, you can always do it as like a bonus or something like that. So it doesn't have to be like super rigid or anything like that. But I always like to make sure that I'm like keeping track of like what we're launching before committing to like getting these episodes mapped out, and then they don't make sense with what we're actually launching that month or that quarter.
Yeah, that's something I help like my clients with too a lot. I feel like it's even more important on Instagram
Mhm.
because they're not like there necessarily to like learn and sit down and pay close attention. But having that like mapped out buyer journey like throughout all your content is like key to
Totally.
making sure that your stuff, wherever you're sharing it, actually converts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and honestly, like that's the reason why I love long form content so much, because you can always just like, you pick that long form content source, whatever that is, a blog, YouTube, or podcast, and then you're able to like break it into smaller chunks for like Instagram and other platforms. So like if
Mhm.
the podcast or whatever channel you're using is already like focused on that stuff, it makes it so much easier to like get it on Instagram, because you're not like, oh, what content do I have to create that actually makes sense to what I'm launching right now? If you're already doing it with the podcast, then it's like you kind of already you solve two jobs there instead of like having to like do two separate things. And of course you can do more content for Instagram that isn't podcast related, but you already have like that core content that you're pulling, and it's already going to be relevant to what you're launching. So you're not having to like do a million different things for every platform, because that can be exhausting, especially if you don't have a massive team, or if you're just like a solo person and you're doing all your social and you're doing all your podcast stuff. It can be a lot if you're trying to like have, like different strategies for every single platform. And of course, like it needs to be tweaked for that platform and stuff. But like if it's all kind of like around the same topic, it's so much easier to create than just like starting from scratch every time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I do and like tell my clients to do as well. It saves so much time and brain space. Um, and it doesn't have to be even like every post is, promoting the podcast specifically, although you absolutely should, on social media. But even just taking like random quotes or random points that you made.
Hmm.
I've even done carousels of like the most like outlandish kind of off topic quotes from an episode and been like, convincing you to listen to this episode with like the most randomest shit. It always generates a lot of comments, if nothing
Right?
else.
Well, because they're like, wait, what? That's so like out of pocket. Why did you say that?
Yeah.
Or like, what does it have to do with anything? But yeah, yeah, that's fun. Yeah, you really rock with carousels and stuff like that. I see your stuff and I'm like, oh man, that is why I focus on podcasting and not Instagram or social media in general.
Yeah, it's weird how much like Instagram has changed over the last couple years too. It's like harder than ever. Have you found any big changes like that in podcasting?
Not really. I feel like, thankfully, because yeah, I mean, I think SEO is always going to be relevant for the podcast. So that, like, of course, it does change and you need to change your strategy every so often. But I have like tools that help me kind of keep on top of that I'm constantly like referring to see, like, oh, did we drop in the ranks or did we rise? Or, what other keywords can I add? What can we track? Things like that. But as a whole, like, there's not really algorithms or anything like that aside from like the search engine optimization, which I'm already focusing on anyway. So there's not like, but you're not like having to be like, "Oh, my episode's not going to get seen if someone like is following me, like it is going to get seen, because it's not like they're throttling certain people's episodes over others. It's just like, you know, if they look in their feed and you follow them, you're going to see it. Right. Whereas like on Instagram, like if you follow the person, you may or may not see it. So thankfully, you're not really competing with people in that way. Um, yeah, I feel like there's not really tons of changes. I mean, yeah, you just kind of have to like make sure like the keywords that you're using are still searchable, because like that changes on a monthly basis.
Mm.
Like some get higher search volume, some get lower search volume and things like that. So you're just like keeping an eye on that, but you're not having to like worry about, oh, are people actually going to see my show that are like following me? So that's nice at least. It's just about new people. But, if you're tracking that pretty consistently, then I feel like you're not really going to experience too much hiccups, like, unless you stop publishing or something for like an extended period of time, because then people are like, okay, where did she go? Did she just ghost? Especially because
Right.
people like stop publishing and then they won't say anything, and then they'll come back and be like, it'll be like 5 months later and they're like, hi guys, I'm back. And it's like, but you didn't even say you were leaving. Like people just like assume
Yeah.
that you're not coming back if you don't like let them know. Right. So I think it's pretty, thankfully, it hasn't changed too much. I mean, there's definitely like new things that come up, like new platforms get new features and things like that, but it's not necessarily like taking away from the podcast experience as a whole, or like changing things where you're like, oh my God. And like, there was like an issue a couple years ago where like, don't put your numbers in like your podcast title. Like, don't put like 10 or like the episode
Yeah.
numbers. And it's like, it's bad for SEO. But like a year later, it's like, no, or a year after that, I was like, no, you can do that. It's okay. And in fact, I prefer it because if you're referring back to episodes and you don't have those titles, it's hard for people to really know, like, oh, which one's episode 10? Especially because different platforms number things differently. I
Yeah.
know Spotify doesn't really have the numbers, whereas like if they listen on Apple and you number it in your system without putting like the number in front of it, like it shows up. But it just depends on where they listen. If you put it in the title, it's always going to be like 10, whatever the title is. And it's easy to refer back to it and link back to it. Whereas like if you don't include that, it's harder for people to find if you're like referencing old episodes, which you definitely should be. So yeah. But aside from that,
Yeah. That's really nice.
yeah. Aside from that, not too many changes, which is why I like it. Because yeah, it's for me too much when feel like I finally get in the groove of things and then something changes. Like I know that's how social media is. You finally like feel like you're like, cool, I got this. I got the hang of this. And it's like, just kidding. We're switching everything up.
Yeah. And then everyone's reach tanks and
Mm-hmm.
engagement and everything. I've honestly like changed how I do it and how I teach my clients to do it. And I recommend like podcasting or podcast guesting or blogging for like visibility and mostly using Instagram for focusing on engagement and having conversations with people to get those like touch points and build trust
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get clients from it because it's so hard to get like the new followers and stuff now, especially with my audience being like busy moms. Like let's not stress about that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Totally.
We don't
Totally.
have the time. Let's work with what we've got.
I swear I've been stuck at like the same amount of followers for like years. I mean, it like goes a little up or a little down, but like
Yeah.
that's has not grown much. And like
Hmm.
I remember, so I used to be a blogger back in the day, like before I even started this business. And I remember I used to easily get like 500 likes per picture, and I didn't have that many followers. And now it's like 30 likes is like it's a struggle.
Yeah. It's definitely different.
Yeah, it's so different. Things have changed so much in the past, like, I don't know, 10 years. I think that's when I was still blogging in like 2015, 2016, and even to 2020. Yeah. So it's interesting just to see how much things have changed. But yeah, podcasting has kind of been the same. I mean, they added new features and things like that, but nothing that's been like, oh my God, I need to change my whole strategy because this new feature was added or taken away or something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know you have a blueprint that helps people with their podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's called the Podcast Growth Blueprint. It is a kind of like a PDF situation that shares my 3 pillars of podcast growth, as well as like a simple growth action plan to kind of help you, what you need to do. It's get seen, get found, get heard. Those are like the 3 pillars. So yeah, it helps you kind of figure how to grow and things like that, and kind of does a little mini dive into the different pillars and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to check it out, it's just podcastingformoms.co/PGB, and then yeah, PGB.
Perfect. And I'm going to link it in the show notes as well. So, but that sounds super helpful. I love when things come with action plans because otherwise I just will not do the things that I've learned about in whatever like guide or training that I've gotten.
Yes, yes, I'm the same way. If I don't have like some, like if it's just like a little like PDF and doesn't include like a little like thing for me to actually like do, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
So I'm the same
exactly.
way.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your podcasting expertise. I love having you. And I know you do like a ton of bundles and summits that are always amazing. Do you have any coming up?
I do have a audio series that will be going live in May. It's like the 11th through the 15th, I believe, that week. And it's called Made in the Margins Sustainable Summer Edition. So it's helping you create your sustainable summer plan so that you don't go crazy when your kids are home for several months at a time. It's, you might have childcare some days you don't. You're flying by the seat of your pants. So the moms in the series and myself are sharing our best tips for getting your business prepared for the summer in advance so that you're not, getting into August and like, oh my God, I have 0 leads, or oh my gosh, I haven't posted all summer. And yeah, it's like tumbleweeds in my inbox, which we don't want. So Yeah, so I'm excited. I've done this event a couple times before, and it's really fun. And I like to do it like May, because I know some people get out in June, so it's like a perfect time to like get it done and get your plan in action before your kids are home. I mean, unfortunately for me, my son is out the 20th. That's his last day of May, so I'm doing it the week before.
Wow.
But I didn't want to do it too early in May, because then people might be like, "What?
Right.
It's too early to think about summer. Why are we doing this already?" So I was like, all right, May 11th through 15th. I can't do it any later because my son is going to be out and he doesn't start camp until June. So
Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. So definitely check that out as well. And again, thank you so much for coming on. I love getting to chat with you.
yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with me on From Content to Clients. If this episode helped you think differently about your content, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. And if you're ready for content that's more strategic and less throw it together and hope for the best, head to sydneyobrien.com to learn more about working with me.